Welcome. So today's topic is about intentions, right? But before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the NASA pics that are going around, right? And I think that, a lot of times when we see things like this, we can get so caught up in, wow, that's such a cool discovery. That's awesome. I can't believe this exists in space. And as Muslims, we look at everything as pointing us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that nothing is a coincidence, that when Allah shows us something, it's not just in vain, right? Because when we think of Allah, He's the one who veils and unveils, correct? What we see with our eye is only because He has unveiled it for us. So if you look around you or if you see something that is beautiful, it's because Allah created it and He allowed for you to see it. And so when Allah unveils something like this, something so beautiful, something we couldn't even imagine, right? Galaxies that we didn't even think existed. We have to think of ourselves, to ourselves, like Allah chose to unveil this for us. And what message is He sending to us? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, signs for those who reflect. So when He gives us signs and we let those moments pass by without reflection, we rob ourselves of that spiritual growth. And we rob ourselves of receiving that message. So I want you to think of it from this angle. A lot of times people don't believe in Jannah or have a hard time connecting to the Akhirah because they can't imagine it. They say, I can't imagine it. I can't picture it. I can't think of it. But before seeing these pics, could you have imagined something like this? No. Could even the greatest of scientists have imagined seeing as many galaxies as they saw? No. And I want to point you to this hadith where the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said that Allah has said, I have prepared for my righteous servants such excellent things that no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, and nor a human heart can ever think of. So Jannah is also something we can't imagine. But when you see something like this, you're like, whoa, how does such beauty exist? I don't know. How many of you saw the pics? Pretty much, right? No, you didn't see it. Okay. Check them out after. They're just amazing. You're like, it really leaves your heart in awe. You're like, how does something like this exist? How does such beauty exist? And you think of Allah and you think, oh, if He created this for us to see, in such an imperfect world, then imagine the beauty He creates for us in a perfect world. If this is the magnificence that He has unveiled for us in a temporary world, because remember, when the day of judgment ends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rolls up the skies like scrolls. It's a wrap, right? So if you think about this, right, something so temporary, something that's not even anything that you see in this world is temporary. But if such beauty exists like this in a temporary world, then imagine the beauty that He has in store for you in a world that is permanent, in a world that is your permanent home. And why do I want to begin with this? Because intentions, being present, doing good deeds, praying in a way that is so like having more accepted prayers, like prayers that leave us walking away different than how we entered them. It all goes back to this, right? It's الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, those who believe in the unseen. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the qualities of those who have taqwa, the first characteristic, taqwa, those who are conscious of Allah. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah, second chapter of the Quran, in the first few verses. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about those who have taqwa, He describes them with a few things. But before He even says prayer, He says, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, those who believe in the unseen. And I always go back to this verse in many of my talks because, and I'm sure for those who have been consistent, I've heard me say this verse a lot, because this verse is the foundation of us gaining taqwa, us gaining God consciousness, us gaining closeness to Allah, us having better prayers, us doing good deeds, us living a life where we prioritize the akhirah over the dunya, where we put everything in perspective, where we give everything its right, where we don't carry more than what we can bear. It goes back to this. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. those who believe in the unseen. And I can tell you from a psychological point of view that those who believe in the unseen is also characteristic for better, greater spiritual, mental, and emotional growth and empowerment. Why? Because to have resilience, you got to believe in what you can't see. To cultivate resilience and strength, you have to have hope in what is not right in front of you. You have to be able to see the bigger picture. That helps your mental health, right? That helps you not fixate on what is right in front of you, where your test and your struggle and your pain becomes your only destination. That only exacerbates mental and emotional pain. So part of a holistic well-being is knowing that your reality right now is not your permanent reality. Your time in this world is not your permanent home. And when we see things like this and we think, wow, then I can't imagine what Allah has created for us in Jannah. I can't imagine what He has prepared for those who He welcomes back beautifully. I can't imagine. And you reflect and you contemplate, and then your heart starts to fill up with this connection to this world that He created for you, that He prepared for you. In psychology, we know that visualization is so important for growth, right? Like if you want to, succeed career-wise, if you want to accomplish a goal, they say visualize. I'm sure many of you have heard this, right? Like to actually practice it daily, where like if you have a goal in mind every day, sit for, 10, 20 minutes and picture your goal. Visualize what that feels like. Visualize you arriving at that goal. And they say it's so powerful. Because what happens is when your mind creates a visual image of something, it actually sends a message to the rest of your body to follow through. And the stronger that image is in your mind, the stronger your actions are connected to that. So they say, for example, if someone has a certain goal and they visualize it every day, they find that they're doing the actions that are in service of that goal because that image is so strong in their hearts. Which is interesting. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ did not say what he said that Allah has said that Allah has prepared for us something that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and not a human heart can think of. Can a heart think? Why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala no mind can think of? Because you use your mind to reflect and to think of an image. But this is the tool of connection. Once that image settles into the heart, that's when you're so connected to it. That's when you're really driven. That's when it's not just a fleeting thought. It's not just, I want to do this. No, it's like, I feel it. I know it. This is a belief. This is a value of mine. This is something I am so connected to. That's the difference between knowledge and connection, right? A lot of us have a lot of information. Actually, it's the difference between information and knowledge. My teacher used to say that information only becomes knowledge when it enters the heart. And in the world we live in today, we value information more than knowledge. One of the things I always tell my students at my institute is that when we do the work, we have to constantly be revisiting things we know and ask, how did that information translate into a shift in my heart? And how did that shift translate into an action in my life where that knowledge, now I can see that the fruits of it in my life. And many of us today, in the world we live in, where we have access to information at the tip of our fingers, we have so much information that we hardly access. And honestly, I don't believe the mind is designed to have that much information. I don't believe the mind is designed to absorb every negative news article, every piece of information about every place in the world. It's not, I don't think it's meant to do that. Even the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and radiallahu anhum, when they used to learn the Quran, they would take a few verses at a time and they would come back after they have seen those verses in their actions. And so I know the talk is about intentions, but I'm starting it off with this because for me to connect your heart to intentions and you to become, so connected to the importance of setting intentions daily, you have to be connected to the akhirah. Because intentions are all about deriving meaning from what you do. And you won't keep setting intentions if you're not connected to the meaning that Allah holds for you in the akhirah. You might do something nice for someone. They don't show any appreciation. They don't care. You might put so much effort into something. The outcome isn't what you expected. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He doesn't make any of our efforts go to waste. So a believer knows that their intentions have value. And so the reason why we started talking about this, about the importance of, I actually forgot to mention something about visualization. If you think, I talked about how it's so important that there's a psychology and the power of imagining things, right? And imagining like what you want to achieve and what that's going to look like. Why do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us so many detailed verses of Jannah? So you could imagine, so you can reflect. Allah gives us so many details so we can think, and wow, it has this and it has this, and these are the qualities of Jannah. So you can think and reflect. So that it becomes like an image, an imagination, a visualization, right? That your heart becomes connected to. So then, just like any other visualization, your actions follow through. And we say our ultimate goal, whenever you ask any Muslim, what's your ultimate goal? Jannah, right? It's like, and it's like, it should be, but like, then shouldn't we visualize that? Shouldn't we take the time to reflect upon that, to connect our hearts to the verses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what He has promised us? And don't you think that if you do that, that then your actions are also going to follow through when that heart has a connection to that? That is ultimately your goal, because we say it's an ultimate goal. Again, back to information, knowledge. No, the heart knows it's its ultimate goal. It's its ultimate destination. And then your limbs act accordingly. You no longer want the things that are displeasing to Allah. You find your heart liking the things that are pleasing to Allah, right? That's what happens. They say that one of the signs that, you have iman in your heart is you start to dislike what Allah dislikes. You start to like what Allah likes. You look at something, and even though it's popular, you say, no, that's not right. It's not according to Allah. It's not what Allah wants. Allah gives this heart an ability to see beyond what the physical eye can see. And so when we talk about Jannah, what is the currency of Jannah? What's the currency of Jannah? What gets you into Jannah? Good deeds, right? Okay, what qualifies a good deed to be accepted? Is it just any deed? Your intention. But what qualifies a good intention? An intention that is accepted. Not every intention is accepted. You guys can chip in too. Okay. What'd you say? Faith, but there's a more specific quality that makes intentions accepted.
Like a pure intention for God's sake.
Pure intention, sincerity, right? A pure intention for Allah's sake, right? That's what makes, sorry, give me 1 second. That's what makes an intention accepted. So the currency for Jannah is good deeds. And what the good deeds that are accepted are the good deeds that have sincere intentions. And we know this, right? One of the foundational hadiths in our tradition is al-a'malu bin-niyat, where the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that verily actions are by their intentions, and every person gets what they intended. So he gives the example. So the one whose hijrah, his migration was for God and His Messenger, then his hijrah was for God and His Messenger. And the one whose hijrah was for the world, to gain from it something or to get married, then his hijrah was for what he made hijrah for. He gave that example, right? So it's not necessarily that a person doing hijrah for the sake of something else, a worldly gain, is haram, no. But when we intend, right? Think about intentions. They are motivations, right? Everyone has an intention. If you think about this, right? There's an intention behind every action, because we as human beings were motivated we do things through motivation, right? We're motivated by our needs. And so either we're not connected to our intention, or our intention is not really for something that brings us value. But if you think about it, is that there's always some kind of motivation to do something. There's always a why behind what we do. There's always a motive. The question is, are we connected to that why? Are we disconnected from it? Do you know what that why is, or are you just on cruise control? Just like, oh, I'll do that, I'll do this, like a leaf in the wind, which a lot of times we are, right? We're just like going through the motions. And so secondly, does that why or reason bring your value into your life? So you could have a why and you could be connected to the why, but is that really going to maximize, what you get in return? Because if you notice in the hadith, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, everyone will get what they intended. What does that tell us? Intentions get you something. Through intentions, we actually get to receive. You get to receive a value. And we know this from psychology today, right? In the Western self-help world, in the Western psychology world, there's this big emphasis now on living intentionally, on how when you are intentional, it just invites you to receive more, invites you to maximize that action. And it has so many mental health benefits. Like living intentionally now is recognized as something that allows you to receive so much more than what you actually do. Right? So here, 1400 years ago, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us, verily your actions are by your intentions, and everyone will get what they intended. So let's break this down, right? You can have a good intention and do something, but what you receive will always be limited if it's not for Allah. And I think this is where people get stuck. Like, what does that mean? Like, my intention for Allah? Like, I get asked that a lot sometimes, especially with my work at my institute with my students. We do work on like transforming our relationship with God and with ourselves. And I have them do this whole section on intentions. And one of the main questions I get is, what does it mean to do something for the sake of Allah? Like, is it that I just say, okay, Allah, this is for you? So sometimes we don't know how to like have a connection to something we know is true in our faith. And that's where we need to break it down. So when we say like, we want to do something for the sake of, when we say intend for Allah, it means you recognize that the one who can give you the most for what you do is God. The one who can reward you the most for what you do is Allah. The one who will make you feel the most seen and heard and appreciated is Allah. When you know that, you wouldn't want to intend for anything else, because you know what you will get will always be limited compared to what you can get from God. In psychology, we know that everyone needs to be seen and heard. This is something that we recognize that without it, there's just such great emotional pain. There's great distress that occurs when people in their relationships and their families don't feel seen and heard or appreciated, right? What are 3 of Allah's names? Ash-Shakur, the most appreciative. As-Sami', the all-hearing. Al-Basir, the all-seeing. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly tells us, Huwa as-Sami' al-Basir, Huwa as-Sami' al-Basir. He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. Because he knows our psychology more than anyone else. Only the Creator can know his design perfectly. He knows how much we long to be seen and heard. And I'll tell you this, you can set intentions for other than Allah, but you'll always be chasing whatever you set that intention for. You can set an intention to please the people. It'll never satisfy you. You'll always want to be pleasing the people. And sometimes you won't please the people. People can be unappreciative. They're not Allah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ash-shakur, which means it's translated sometimes as the most grateful or the most appreciative, right? Because shukr comes from the word shukr, which means gratitude. Allah is ash-shakur because he gives you so much more than what you give him. He appreciates the littlest step you take towards him. So when in Hadith Qudsi, we know if my servant walks towards me with a hand's length, I walk towards him with I go towards him with an arm's length. If he comes to me walking, I go to him running. Allah is so appreciative of what you do. You take any step towards him, he doesn't make it unseen. He sees it, he validates it, and you feel it. You feel it. You say, okay, today, you know what? I'm going to take just one little step to be closer to Allah. And you feel it. You feel it in your life. You feel it in the barakah that you have in your day. You feel it in the blessings you receive. You feel like you get so much more back internally than what you gave him. That's an appreciative. That's appreciation. It's like, my servant did that. Let me give him. And may Allah make us appreciative of his creation as he is appreciative of us. But those are the three qualities that many people seek, right? Appreciation, to be seen, to be heard. And here we become so disconnected from how God gives us those things. And that's the beauty of Islam, is that we have the opportunity to gain with Allah what we did not get with the people. I'm going to say that again. For anyone hearing this who feels like, I didn't get this from my parents, I didn't get this from this person or this relationship or that relationship. As Muslims, we have the opportunity to gain from Allah what we did not get with the people, from the people. That's a power. Because as human beings, I know this world always tells you that, you're the master of yourself, which is Allah. No, we are not. So loving yourself does not mean you worship yourself. And loving yourself does not mean that you're the source of everything you need, because we're not designed that way. We're not designed to be the source of everything we need. Allah is the source of everything we need. And as human beings, we long to be seen and heard from something outside of us. So sacred self-love, yeah, I want everyone to love themselves, and I want everyone to feel valuable, and I want everyone but to appreciate the qualities that Allah has given them. But don't confuse that for self-worship, because you're going to struggle in the end. You were designed to be seen and heard by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just as people are designed, want to feel seen and heard by someone they love. So I want to change the way we think about intentions, because it's not this technical thing of like, okay, I did this for Allah. You have to feel it in your heart. So what does that mean? When you do something for Allah, my teacher used to say that sincerity, ikhlas, is when the nafs gets no share from the action. So the nafs is the part of you that is, sometimes I call it the ego containing self, but it's the part of you that is driven by, pleasure seeking part of yourself, wants to feel comfort. It wants to feel the self-importance, right? It wants to feel, that attention. It wants credit. It wants, right? So when the nafs, and it's really the humanness of us. It's the humanness that we have to kind of put into check. It's the lower self, sometimes it's translated into. So we want to live from that higher self that recognizes that what we do for Allah is the most valuable things we can do. And so when you do a sincere action, your nafs does not get a share, meaning what? You don't have any worldly gain that you're trying to associate with that action. You do it, and you have an action, you do a good deed, and it is enough for you that Allah has rewarded you for it. Not, I did a good deed, but I'm also going to share it so I can get the reward, but I want other people to also acknowledge it. That's not sincerity. The greatest and fastest, if you ever feel like your iman is low, and you're like, I need to change this. I want an easy fix for my iman today. I'll tell you one thing that you can do. That's one of the fastest ways to increase your iman. And it is do an action that day that nobody knows about but Allah. Tell no one. But as you are doing it, feel that only me and Allah know. Only you, Allah, know. It's enough that you know. Do a powerful good deed. Go help somebody, do something good for somebody else, and don't tell anyone. What that does is that you're cultivating this muscle that prioritizes Allah seeing you above anyone else, and feel content with that. Feel sufficed with that. That's enough for me. that itself is valuable on its own. You know, I don't need to post about it for it to be valuable. There isn't this, I know there's this trending phrase, did it even happen if you didn't post about it? I'm probably butchering the phrase, but right, like that's like a thing that people say now, right? Like, did it even happen if you didn't share it on social media? That's this world, I'm telling you, it's like literally like robbing people of the beauty of sincerity. And shaitan will come to you and say, post about it, doesn't take away from your sincerity. You know, you helped all these people, like, you know, show them so they can, you know, encourage other people. I get it. But if you didn't build the muscle first of knowing what it means to do actions for the sake of Allah alone and know the beauty of that, how will you know the difference between sharing something for the sake of Allah still, but to encourage others, but still for the sake of Allah, and doing something because you're confused and you're just masking it with, well, I'm encouraging others, right? You won't know the difference because you haven't cultivated the muscle of sincerity first, and you don't know what it feels like to do things for Allah alone where you feel sufficed. And so it's a confusing time, you know, and a lot of times we're doing very nafs-oriented things, nafs-driven things, ego-driven things, and we're masking it with Islam. You know, we post a picture and we you know, it doesn't really bring us any value. It doesn't bring, but we say, oh, this is for, we mask it beautifully with Islam, you know. We have to be careful. Just because it's popular and just because people are doing it doesn't mean that it's good for your heart. So I really think that it's so important. This is why that, you know, halwa, like alone time with Allah, and cultivating the muscle of doing things privately, good deeds privately, is so important, because it strengthens that relationship with Allah. It allows you to prioritize Him seeing you. And Allah gives us the example of, you know, a person on the Day of Judgment who will come to Allah and say, you know, I've recited the Quran, you know, I learned knowledge and I taught it to the people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, will tell him that, you know, you have lied. You've learned the deen and you taught it for the sake of the people, so people can call you a reciter. So people can say, oh, so-and-so is knowledgeable, or so-and-so is this. Allah knows. And honestly, the scariest thing for all of our hearts is to meet Allah empty-handed. To think we have done all of these good deeds and Allah says, but none of them were for me. None of them were for me. And it's not just about the akhirah. You rob yourself in this world too. Because when you intend, like, think about it from earlier, you know, when I was saying from a psychological point of view, they say there's so many benefits, right? To just being intentional, to just someone knowing the intention behind their actions. Not talking about God right now, just someone knowing the intentions behind their actions, that itself brings so much power. Now imagine then that if somebody's intentions are directed towards something, they can receive benefit. Imagine then the benefit you receive when your intentions are directed towards Allah. You feel more grounded. You feel more at peace. You feel more enough. You feel more sufficed. You chase people less. You are less attached to what people give you in return. You stay true to your standards. You're not like a yo-yo. You're like, oh, well, people didn't react well, I'm not going to do that good thing anymore. No, that's who you are. You know that someone greater saw it. It's in a record. It's seen, it's heard, it's recorded, it's valuable. That's the psychological effect of making your intentions for Allah, is that you detach from the outcome, because you know that He doesn't hold you responsible for the outcome. He holds you responsible for the intention behind those efforts and the deed. And the companions were known as tujar niyat. They were like the businessmen of niyyah. So for one action, because like I said, intentions allow you to receive. So look, they're not saying, oh, I'm just going to do it. I don't want to receive anything. No, they want to receive, but who do they want to receive from? Allah. So they would sit and think, for one action, how many intentions can I make for this one action so I could receive more from Allah? Now imagine how present they will be with that action. That's the other thing that we often miss, is that when you're not intentional before an action, you don't know your intention, you're more disconnected from the action itself. So this is what happens where people, like, they're doing a lot of good things. When they go to bed, they feel like, I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough. And not in the sense of like, I always want to do more for God. No, in the sense of like, they don't see any value in what they have done. They feel empty. That's different than the sense of like, no, I want to continue striving towards Allah, right? Many people are in this state right now. They're doing so much. They're so busy. I'm busy, right? And you're doing a lot. They're on the go from one thing to another. When they go to bed at night, they feel empty. This is because there's a lack of connection to the value of what they are doing. And intentions are what bring value, not actually the action itself. The action, the good deed brings value to whoever, right? Like if you're doing something good for someone, of course it's valuable, like they're going to receive that, right? But your heart receives nourishment from the intention itself before it receives from the action. So when you intend, you actually receive more from the action because now you're connected to the why. You're connected to why you're doing it. You're connected to what Allah's giving you. You're connected to the beauty of it. And when you intend for Allah, there are things that you can't even imagine to receive. And that's not something I can explain. You have to feel it, right? You might do an intention. It's an experiential kind of knowledge where you do something for Allah and you find Him giving you things that you didn't ask for. You go help somebody else for His sake and you find that there's more barakah in that meeting. You feel it. I can't explain it. You can't explain it, right? But you just walk away and you're like, that was a blessed meeting. That was really nice. You go help somebody out and you walk away and you're just content. It doesn't matter. Nobody saw me. I'm like, thank you, Allah, for this. Thank you, Allah, for giving me the opportunity to do something for your sake. And so these are things that you can't measure or they're priceless. But we rob ourselves when we're just on cruise control, when we're like, we don't even sit and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? The beautiful thing is you can always renew your intentions. Even right now, you guys came to this class. It's always good to renew our intentions, and align that intention with Allah. Ya Allah, if I came here just seeking, I don't know, I'm just giving an example, like just to be around people or, then no, Ya Allah, I'm coming here for you, to learn, to become closer to you, to earn your reward, because you love when I go seek knowledge, when the angels look for gatherings like this. Why? Because they're beloved to Allah. The angels search the world for gatherings that remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they find a gathering that remembers Allah, they come and they descend and they sit with those people. Because remembering Allah is all they know. They can't imagine any other beauty other than worshiping Allah and remembering Him. So when they find human beings doing it, they become so happy. They're like, what? And they want to be in our presence. And when we're done with our gathering, they're so happy to have sat with us and seen this and witnessed it, that they go up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they mention each of us by name. And they say, so-and-so was there and so-and-so. Of course, Allah knows, but this is just a reflection of how powerful it is, how powerful these gatherings are, how powerful it is to go to do something for the sake of Allah. And then the angels will say, there's a person there who came just because his friends were coming, or like he came like with them, not really with the intention of coming for your sake. And Allah will say, well, reward him as you have like rewarded the others. So Allah will reward him the same, right? So what does that tell us, right? There's such power, like the angels having to point out the person who didn't come for like that sake is just to show you like the power of coming for the sake of Allah, right? That like but still the fact that you're here, there's so much barakah in itself that Allah rewards you just for being here. So how many of us are connected to the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many of us have that world as a reality in our heart? That is a real place. And I look for opportunities like this, you know, such as like these NASA pics, or you see something beautiful in the sky or a full moon, or, you know, because those are the moments that like, wow, if this is so beautiful. For me, it's a full moon. Whenever I see a full moon, it just makes me like I can't imagine if that, like if the moon is this beautiful, a full moon, then I can't imagine what it is to look at Allah, to view Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was actually one of the things that it's a hadith, right, where the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting with the companions and there was a full moon. And he said to them, you will see Allah as clearly as you see this moon. So we should look for opportunities where we remember those realities, where we remember what we cannot see, where we remember what is veiled from us. And believe me, when you start living your life and you practice this work and you practice cultivating the muscle of setting intentions for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your life becomes simpler. So many of us become so distracted and confused because we don't know why we're doing things. Then we get frustrated and resentful because we weren't connected to our intention, and then we had expectations, and we, you know, this is what I feel is happening more and more, where people are just disconnected from themselves. And when you're disconnected from yourself, you don't know, you're not connected to the meaning behind the things that you're doing. So we want to stop living on cruise control. We want to stop just going through the motions, because in the end, we don't hurt Allah, we hurt ourselves. And intentions are such a great place to start. You know, start cultivating the muscle of assessing, why am I doing this? And okay, this is why I'm doing it. This is the reality. Okay, that's the truth. This is my raw truth of why I wanted to do this action. Is there any way that I can align this action with Allah? But first, you got to know your truth. First, you got to know what it is that you really were seeking from doing that action. And then you think, well, no, how can I elevate that intention? How can I direct myself to seek from Allah what I'm seeking from the world? And see how that action, the experience of that action changes for you. One second. And so, hold on one second, sorry. And so in any moment when we do something or when we're about to do a good deed, I want us to think of that. How can I elevate this intention so that I can receive greater value from that action? One of the things that I actually teach is this concept of intent to ascend. Okay. So when you intend, you're actually like elevating yourself. You're living from that higher self. And you're ascending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're ascending to the things that you want to achieve. You're essentially elevating the opportunity that you have from that action. And so one of the things that I want you to think about is that when you do an action, that action is going to come and go, right? Experiences come and go. But that intention gives a value to that action that transcends time and place. Meaning what? You have an intention to do something, you see the barakah of it and the blessing of it and the value of it long after that action's done. Allah's rewarding you. You receive that reward in the akhirah, right? So intentions are this like, it's like the sacredness of it. It's the sacredness of the action. So because the experience is going to come and go. You're going to do the action, you're going to pass. It's going to pass. But what gives it value beyond that time? It's intention. That's what allows you to walk away feeling that feeling of I'm sufficed. I feel like this has value for me. This has meaning for me. And that's really important for us to experience. Otherwise, like I said, you know, we're just going to be in this loop of doing all these things and then feeling empty. Like, what did I do today? And, you know, why do I feel like this? And this is a growing thing. I'm finding a lot of people, like I'll meet with people and they'll be telling me like they're doing these amazing things in their life. And they'll say, but I feel empty. So I'll explore that. Like, why, where's this emptiness coming from? It's a disconnect. It's a disconnect from the value of what they're doing. And that what they're doing has a value beyond the time of when they do it. And that's what we want to connect our hearts to.